The brilliant Outer Worlds drops on consoles and PC this week, and while it isn't the hardest game you'll have ever come across in recent years, it can be tricky to get its nuances down to a T and overcome its relatively challenging opening few hours. So we did what we do best, and that's compile 7 tips to make you a pro at the Outer Worlds. But that's not all, folks, because this time we thought we'd also prepare you for the game's hugely challenging Supernova mode, which throws in a hell of a lot more obstacles, meaning you need to be ready for what the game hurls at you, which is a bloody lot. So without further ado, here are 7 tips to make you a pro at the Outer Worlds, and more importantly, smash Supernova mode with relative ease. Before you kick things off in the Outer Worlds, you're going to need to work out how you want to play the game. Bear in mind, this doesn't really limit you, it just gives you some advantages and more options along the way. Choosing your attributes can be pretty important. We'd argue though that even if you want to build a warrior who kicks everybody's ass, you should put your attribute points into personality and mind before your body. You can get by in the Outer Worlds on skill, armor and weapon selection alone. You should only really put a point into the strength category to make it good so you can carry more and thus sell more. More on that shortly. In terms of skills, we recommend investing in the dialogue and stealth tree from the off, especially on Supernova difficulty, as these can sometimes allow you to bypass combat, which proves to be a godsend as you get deeper into the game. Think about it this way, it's always nice to have the option to talk your way out of a sticky situation. Once you start to level up in the Outer World, you're going to get skill points to invest in your character. From the off, you're going to want to put these skill points into 5 categories: hack, lockpick, persuade, lie and intimidate. First things first, get these 5 categories up to 50, which can be quite easy to start with as you invest in the categories themselves as opposed to the individual skills. 1 point in dialogue pre-50 will add a point to all 3 skills in that category. These 5 skills will allow you to bypass a lot of the game's combat if you so wish. You'll be able to talk your way out of situations as well as hack and lockpick past heavily fortified outposts and miss out less desirable routes altogether. Remember as well, where possible, hack and lockpick everything provided you don't be seen, as these will give you a nice handy XP boost that will prove vital in the long run. Same for conversation choices as well. Choose them where possible, as these will also give you a nice XP boost too. On Supernova difficulty, taking the special conversation choices is vitally important because the enemies will have more health and inflict greater damage, so it's best to avoid combat where possible, rather than going toe to toe with them, which can sometimes lead to some tragic circumstances, whether that's your death or your companion's death. More on that shortly too. Combat stats are not necessarily that important in the Outer Worlds, as you can rely on weapons, armor and tinkering to get the best out of your build. The only skill you want to unlock for the vast majority of the game from a combat standpoint is for the specific targeting while in tactical time dilation mode. You'll be better off avoiding combat though where possible on Supernova mode, which means points invested in the more physical stats are pretty much wasted. Honestly though, focus on talking the talk, and once you have the holographic shroud, you can easily talk your way out of many tricky situations, provided you get the right ID cartridge for the correct area, that is. It's also worth mentioning that if characters in the world are named, there's a good chance they'll either give you a quest for XP, be involved in a quest at some point, or they'll sell you something, so keep an eye out for them and possible XP boosts dotted around Halcyon. The rest are essentially fodder if you choose to off them. Don't do that though, you'll only make your life a living nightmare, as you'll seriously piss off some factions if you do. Every 2 levels in the Outer World, you'll be awarded a point to unlock a perk from the perk skill tree. There is a lot of pointless ones in there, so it's best to play to your strengths from the off. The Pack Mule perk is handy for hoarding items, more on the significance of that shortly, as is the Toughness perk to give you more health. Slow the World and Quicken the Dead are important later on, when combat might and probably will be a necessity. What is necessary though is Deadly Demonstrations, which gives you a 50% increase from companion kills, which will mean a hell of a lot more XP as you progress throughout the game. Yes, companions are vital when it comes to Supernova mode and can be super handy on other difficulties too, but sometimes when you can talk your way out of trouble, the Soliloquy perk can be super handy to have. Basically, get that perk, send your squad mates back to the ship, and get a temporary plus 10 boost on all dialogue skills while going solo. It got me out of a bind on many instances. A good way to get more perk points, as you can only get 15 before you max your level out, is to accept some of the game's flaws. Taking on flaws like corrosive weakness, which increases the corrosive damage you receive by 25%, is a good trade-off for an extra perk point, for instance, as there are only a few areas in which you will come across corrosive damage dealing enemies, namely a monarch. Same with things like Farsighted, which reduces melee weapon skills, but because we don't have a build that uses melee weapons, it's another good trade-off to take. Sometimes it's all about balancing the negatives with the positives. For instance, the drug addiction perk only screws us over in stats when we're suffering from drug withdrawal. Your Adreno inhaler, which heals you, counts as a drug. Some of those stats it screws us over on are for skills that we don't use anyway, so that's okay. Plus, those negative effects go away when you use your inhaler anyway, so it's a flaw worth taking on. Put it this way, considering you only get 1 perk point for every 2 levels, the drug addiction perk is worth the risk on this occasion. So, take on flaws that won't negatively impact your build or playstyle, and spend that perk point on something that will positively impact it. The easiest route to success in the Outer Worlds is basically to become a pack mule. Not only can you sell junk, which has no other purpose in the game other than to sell, but you can also sell duplicate weapons, armors, etc. But before you go selling all the armor you're not using though, keep a few that have handy skill bonuses for various situations. Things like plus 5 dialogue skills, plus 5 stealth skills can be done at specific times and can mean the difference between you having a tough time and you wandering through a warehouse without a care in the world. This definitely saved us on multiple occasions. You're not going to want to sell everything either, just most of it. Some weapons and armors you will need to break down for parts that will then repair your weapons and armor. Repairing weapons and armor is vital in the Outer Worlds as it seriously impacts their effectiveness if you don't. Sure, getting into fights can net you XP for leveling up, but it can also affect your standing with a faction. That said, Marauders and Beasties are fair game, so go nuts on them for the XP boost. As we said earlier, if you do aggro out a faction, you're going to have a really tricky time of it. Anyway, having multiple companions with you also ups your maximum carry weight as well, so that's worth taking into account. Because you need to eat and drink to survive in Supernova mode, it's worth nicking everything you can, without being caught of course, and having a good supply of each on your person at all times. On that note, pretty much steal anything and everything you can, because as long as you don't get seen doing it, there are no repercussions. If you do get seen, then you can just bribe your way out of trouble. In fact, there are tons of situations in the Outer Worlds where you can just bribe your way to success, so always have a good wad of cash on you. Something that will be easily possible if you followed our tip and became a pack mule. Over encumbered? Easy. Just break down the weapons and armors you're hoarding on your persons for weapon and armor parts. Also, you have what seems like never-ending storage space on your ship, so feel free to store anything and everything there. One more thing about Supernova mode before we move on, and this has nothing to do with being a pack mule, but we literally had nowhere else to put this. You need to sleep to survive in this mode, and you can only sleep on your ship. Easy, right? Because you can fast travel there whenever you want. To put it simply, companions are vital in Supernova mode. In fact, in all modes they can be helpful, but in Supernova mode, their assistance in firefights is not to be underestimated. There is a caveat, however. As we alluded to earlier on, in Supernova mode, they are susceptible to death. In all other modes, they will get down during fights, and once the fight is finished, they'll get back on their feet. But in Supernova mode, they'll be completely kaput, dead, gone, no longer with us. Try not to let that happen. Do this by protecting them at all costs. The first thing you'll want to do is give them more health in their perk skill tree. Then, if you're feeling brave, invest in the sneaky perk, which generates 30% less threat. That does mean you'll be more at threat as a result, but I have every faith in you, so don't worry. And there is a reason for this madness too, and that's you can be a little bit more tactical, hiding behind objects, using the medical inhaler and so on. You do not want your companions to permadie, as it'll only screw you over in the long run. It's probably worth mentioning as well, you're only able to save on your ship in Supernova mode too, so travel back often as possible to save, as autosaves can be hugely sporadic. You can also only fast travel to your ship in Supernova mode, so that's also worth bearing in mind. In terms of strategies, however, hang back, shoot from a distance, try not to aggro everyone, and use not only your squad's abilities on the D-pad, but also pull them out of danger if they're taking too much of a kicking. Do that and you should be golden. Don't forget you can change your companion's rules of engagement in their character screen as well. Your loadout. The most important part of the game if you decide to put all of your eggs into the talkie-talkersome basket, because let's be honest, you can't really avoid every combat encounter. Ammo is plentiful in Halcyon, so don't worry about that too much. If you're looting every corpse and every house, and again, not being caught, you'll have a bloody load of it come the end of the game. Like we said previously, if you do get caught, you can pretty much bribe or talk your way out of any situation anyway. Let's talk guns for a second. We found the standard pistol, the hunting rifle and assault rifle combo to be the most effective. Putting a silencer mod, the Whisper Quiet Muzzler, on the pistol and the hunting rifle allowed us to be fairly stealthy, enough to gain an advantage anyway, while the assault rifle just does ridiculous DPS at both range and up close. Don't bother with melee options, because if you've been following our tips, your build will not cope very well with that at all. In terms of other mods, whack them on where possible. The Magnum on the pistol is great, for instance, and adding an elemental magazine onto the assault rifle with the extendo sight makes the weapon even more unstoppable. As for your fourth weapon, the plasma rifle can be devastating at both range and up close, especially because it has splash damage, but it can take a while to get used to because of the bullet travel time. Well, not bullet, but plasma, you know what we mean. Try and get used to it though, it's pretty damn powerful. It should be worth noting that there are various iterations of each weapon, like the pistol has a Mark II version for instance, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't upgrade the first iteration to save all your bits to upgrade the Mark II. Oh no. Upgrade all your weapons and your armor where possible, because you can be using a specific gun for a good 10 to 20 hours. If the upgrade costs 5,000 bits, however, it's probably not worth it. That's when you should wait to come across the newer models, usually found when you get off Terra 2 and onto Monarch. Armor wise, always have some heavy armor on your persons in case it all kicks off or is about to, but wear a piece of armor that will help you most when it comes to skills, whether that's one with a dialogue boost, a hacking boost or whatever. Still, the armor's protection value is kind of important too, so try and get the best of both worlds. The Aramid Ballistics protective clothing was perfect for our build for most of the game. Later on though, do the quest for Celeste in Byzantium to get a piece of armor, Chimera, that has both great skill bonus stats and good protection. That can be tinkered with too. Also, don't forget to kit your companions out with better armor and weapons, while also remembering to tinker and modify their stuff as well, as that can be a massive help while out in the field. Oh, what's that? You want some great science weapons before you go? Well, do the Weapons from the Void mission, available by visiting the Captain's Terminal on the Unreliable. They aren't massively powerful, but their effects are bloody great. The Mind Control Ray can help add numbers in your favour in the heat of a battle, the Mandibular Rearranger can freeze enemies in place, and the Gloop Gun can send them floating into the air. These can be found by simply buying quest items from various planet-specific retailers and then just reading them and following the waypoints. The best one though, the Shrink Ray. Look at this little dude, look at him. Aww. So there you have it folks, 7 indispensable tips to help you survive the Outer Worlds and more importantly, the really tricky Supernova mode. Good luck out there folks, it's a bit of a wasteland. Before you go, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe and we'll see you next time. Cheers folks, bye.